I'd say that the institution that has taken the biggest hit within our society is the institution of marriage. And, sometimes I stay up at night, thinking about this. What happened to it? What happened to us? And it has something to do with freedom. Something magical is happening to us. There are these natural ebbs and flows that a society has. I guess you could say that there are these different energies or something like that. But the way that you can really see this, the biggest indicator of it is our crumbling institutions. And I'd say that the institution that is taking the biggest hit is the institution of marriage. And there are all kinds of historical factors that led up to this, finances, economics, gender dynamics, politics, right? All of this stuff. But we are actually in this unprecedented era of freedom. This is what is disintegrating this institution. Marriage is some kind of institution of stability and predictability. And the way that we look at it today is as boredom. People are choosing to be free. There is this fundamental dynamic between what I refer to as memory and the imagination. But if you're a layman, if you're just a normal person, perhaps you call it order and chaos. And to us, this chaos is perceived as freedom. People are choosing to live with fewer attachments, right? Less homes are being bought, less relationships are being forged. And we just look at it as, yeah, we're freer now more than ever. We are hooking up, we are more promiscuous, we are commitment phobic. And one of the obvious ramifications of this freedom is a lack of stability. That's what comes with it. Everything feels like this all of the time, that we are on this shaky ground. And I'm obviously naturally curious about why is this? How did it get like this? And one of the more obvious answers is the empowerment of women. Women have much more freedom. This is what they are saying, that before they were, under ball and chain. They were sort of like these caged birds. And now they're able to be free and they're able to make their own decisions and be in charge of their own destiny. And men haven't been coping with this very well. Men have been struggling with this because now, in order for you to gain a partner, you have to be a decent person. You have to bring something more to the table than stability. One thing that I know about the imagination, or what you probably call chaos, right, or freedom, it all depends on your perspective, is that it is an indicator of some kind of transformation. That's what it does. It is a transformation agent. And what's ultimately happening within our relationships, which I believe is the most important thing, the relationship between men and women, is we are renegotiating the way that we relate to each other. The way that we relate to each other is undergoing some kind of a transformation. And everyone's talking about this, but what no one knows is what this exactly will look like. No one knows. We're all sitting around and debating and talking on podcasts, trying to figure out, well, what does our future look like together? We are in some kind of a decision. This one thing I am certain of. I talk about metaphysics and I talk about, life as it pertains to these strange underlying principles that appear to govern us and move about in society. And this situation that we all find ourselves in is trying to have our cake and eat it too. We want the partner who is stable but also fun and adventurous. And we can't seem to find that. We can't seem to, it's almost as if reality is forcing us to tear this thing apart, this union of opposites. It's forcing us to tear it apart. And, people call this some kind of dualistic framework. You want the 6 foot hunk who's, a sweetheart. You want the bad boy who's good to you. You want the lady in the streets, but a freak in the sheets. This is what we all deep down, this is what we all really want. But nature is forcing us to pick one. And we've reached a point today where we are struggling to make this decision. We have reached some kind of new form of unhappiness that we're struggling to cope with. And what I think is we're actually being forced into some kind of higher frequency, if you want to be woo woo about this, or, You could say our consciousness is evolving, elevating, transforming, as I mentioned. But, people typically say the word balance, that, you should try to strike a balance. You should be a little bit of both. And I think that's what nature is calling us towards. It's some kind of new form of frequency, resonance, right? That's what a balance is. It is flipping in between the two. Your ability to flip in between the two at faster and faster rates. Your ability to be nice and a jerk at faster and faster rates. Something like this is happening to us. And I think that those of us who are able to master this ability will have an evolutionary advantage, right? If you are a guy and you are able to do this, all of the women will want you, right? This is what's happening, and trying to navigate all of this will be complicated, but I just more so focus on these underlying patterns. I can clearly see them. And I talk about these underlying patterns on my website, Paramind. I'll have the image somewhere on this video, paramind.org. If you're interested in this dynamic, between memory and the imagination, as I put it, but it manifests in all of our lives. I've used the example, the good guy who's nice to you, or the lady in the streets, but the freak in the sheets, this perfect Christ archetype that we have this hole in our hearts for is what we lust after. It's what we ultimately desire, and it appears to be calling us towards it. And I talk about this in depth over there on my website, paramind.org, link in the description. But the talk of the town that I hear a lot of people discussing is, you know, changing what marriage is, renegotiating what marriage is, the marriage contract. Both parties have to feel as though they're getting something out of the deal. And the way that it is right now, each party is just focused on what it wants rather than what the other party wants. I talk to people all of the time, and it's always about what I want, what kind of husband I want, what kind of wife that I want. But you have to also consider, what kind of partner does the other person want? What kind of spouse does the other person want? That is equally as important. And something is happening to us where we just don't give a damn. We don't care about that. It's me first. It's me, me, me. But marriage is the dissolution of that. It is the antithesis of freedom, as we are finding out. It is to be bonded to another person forever. So I suggest that you all choose wisely.